The sun of the forgotten world rose slowly, painting the sky in shades of pale gold and faint purple. The small planet had no name on any star map. To Elias Kane, it was simply home. His home was not much. A cabin built from broken parts of old cargo crates and local wood stood on a hill, overlooking a wide valley of gray stone and stubborn green plants. Smoke curled from the chimney as Elias stirred the fire inside. Elias was a tall man with a beard grown wild over the years. His eyes were sharp, yet tired, like someone who had seen too much of life. He lived alone here, far from the voices of other humans, far from the noise of starships and the cold halls of colonies. Every morning began the same. He stepped out of his cabin, felt the cool wind of the valley, and checked the crops he had planted. Strange-looking plants with wide leaves grew in neat rows, their roots holding moisture from the soil. He had studied them long ago, testing which ones could be eaten and which ones could not. A man alone could not risk mistakes. After tending the crops, he moved to his workshop. It was nothing more than a shed filled with broken machines, old circuits and tools he had kept from his past life. Some of the machines still worked, patched together from scrap. Others waited for the day he found the patience to fix them. This was Elias's life. Simple, quiet, and lonely. He had not spoken to another soul for many years. The last human voice he had heard was through a comm device, just before he turned it off forever. Too much pain, too many memories. He had left the galaxy of men and women behind, carrying nothing but his survival skills and his stubborn will. At night, he sat by the fire and looked at the stars. Sometimes he thought he could hear echoes from them, ships passing in the distance, signals crossing the void, but he did not listen. The stars belonged to others now, not to him. Yet solitude had its own weight. He would catch himself speaking, aloud, muttering at machines or whispering at the wind. Some nights he dreamed of cities, laughter, and faces he once knew. But each morning he reminded himself why he had left. A wound too deep, a sorrow too heavy. To him, loneliness was safer than remembering. But solitude was about to end. It began on an evening when the sky was restless. Clouds gathered thick above the valley, but Elias knew the weather of this planet well. These were not storm clouds. The wind did not carry the smell of rain. He stood outside, staring at the strange light above. A streak of silver fire cut across the heavens faster than any natural meteor. His heart quickened. It was not the first time he had seen falling objects from the sky, but this one was different. The glow was steady, controlled like a vessel breaking atmosphere. The streak split the air with a deep roar, louder than thunder, shaking the ground under his boots. Elias followed it with his eyes as it plunged into the far side of the valley. A flash lit the horizon, followed by silence. Elias did not move for a long while. His instinct told him to stay away. Whoever came from the stars carried danger, and he wanted no part of it. But curiosity was a chain too strong to break. Finally, he gathered his gear. He strapped on a simple pack, a lantern, and an old energy rifle he had repaired years ago, though he had not fired it in ages. Then he began the long walk down into the valley. The valley was rough and uneven, carved by rivers that had dried long ago. As Elias drew closer, he saw smoke rising in the distance. His steps slowed, his heart steady but heavy. Memories returned uninvited. Memories of battles, of broken ships, of comrades lost. At last, he reached the crash site. Before him lay the broken remains of a vessel unlike any he had seen. It was small and elegant, shaped like a silver bird, with long wings now bent and twisted. Strange markings glowed faintly across its hull, symbols of a language not human. He approached with care, scanning the wreck with his lantern. Steam hissed from broken vents. Sparks leapt from shattered panels, and then, through the smoke, he saw movement. Inside the shattered cockpit. A figure stirred. Elias lifted his rifle, instincts sharpened from long-forgotten training. But as the smoke cleared, his eyes widened. The figure was not human. It was tall, and slender, with skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light as though touched by starlight itself. A long robe of pale fabric, torn and burned from the crash, clung to its form. The being's face was fine and graceful, with eyes that glowed a soft violet dot. For the first time in years, Elias felt his breath catch. He lowered the rifle, staring. The alien looked back, its gaze sharp yet weak with pain. Then, with surprising clarity, it spoke. Its words were strange, flowing, like music. Elias did not understand, but the tone carried meaning. It was a plea. The being collapsed forward, half falling from the wreck. Elias hurried, his instincts pushing aside fear. He caught the alien gently, lowering it to the ground. The being was light, fragile in his arms, yet its presence carried a strange power. For a long time, Elias knelt there in the wreckage, holding the fallen stranger. His mind screamed to let go, to leave, to return to his safe solitude. But another part of him, the human part long buried, whispered that he could not abandon someone in need. The alien's violet eyes opened briefly, meeting his. For the first time in many years, Elias Kane heard a voice not his own, soft and filled with life. It was not the voice of memory, it was the voice of the present. And it would change everything. That night, Elias carried the stranger back to his cabin. The fire burned bright as he laid the alien on his bed, covering it with his blanket. The crash site still smoked in the valley, but Elias's thoughts were no longer on the wreck. They were on the being who had fallen from the stars. He did not know who or what it was. He did not know why it had come or what dangers it might bring. But deep in his heart, Elias knew one thing for certain. His solitude had ended. The cabin was quiet except for the soft crackle of firewood. Elias Kane sat on a wooden stool, staring at the stranger lying on his bed. The alien's chest rose and fell slowly, breathing in a rhythm that reminded him of the calm tide of distant seas. The shimmer of her skin caught the firelight, and her violet eyes fluttered open from time to time before sinking back into rest. Elias leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his mind tangled in thoughts. He had lived alone for so many years, hiding from the galaxy, burying himself in silence. And now, by chance or by fate, a traveler from the stars had fallen into his valley. He should have left her in the wreck. He knew it, yet he could not. The memory of her weak gaze, the sound of her voice like soft music, would not allow him to walk away. Fool, Elias muttered to himself. You just invited trouble into your life again. Still, he rose and moved to the table where he kept herbs and bandages. He had long practiced treating his own wounds, for no doctor lived within 1,000 light years of this place. Carefully, he mixed a paste from crushed roots and applied it to the burns on the alien's arm. She flinched faintly but did not wake. As he worked, he studied her closely. Her features were delicate yet strong, her silver hair falling in strands across her face. She looked almost human, yet not quite. Her ears were slightly longer, her eyes brighter than any human's. She wore what remained of a robe that had once been fine, woven with threads that glimmered faintly even in ruin. She did not seem like a soldier or a common traveler. She carried herself with dignity even in her weakened state. By morning, she stirred fully awake. Elias was mending a broken pan when he heard a faint sound. He turned and found the alien sitting up, her hand against her forehead. Her violet eyes scanned the room before settling on him. They locked gazes, and for a long moment neither spoke. Finally, she whispered something in her strange language. Elias raised his hand slightly. I don't understand you, he said slowly. But you're safe here. Her eyes narrowed, studying him carefully. Then, to his surprise, she touched a small device on her wrist, burned and cracked, yet still functional. She pressed it and a faint hum filled the air. When she spoke again, the words were broken, but they were in his tongue. Human. You helped me? Elias blinked. It had been years since he heard another voice speak directly to him, yet here it was, clear and filled with life. Yes, he answered. I found you in the wreck. You were hurt. The alien closed her eyes for a moment as though gathering strength. Then she opened them again. My name, Serenia, she said softly. Princess Serenia, of the Luthari Star Empire. Elias's breath caught. A princess? Here, in his valley? He shook his head in disbelief. You're a long way from your empire, princess. Serenia gave a weak, bitter smile. Yes, too far. I was fleeing. My ship destroyed. Her words came slowly, as if the translator struggled with her language. Elias leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Fleeing from what? Her expression darkened. Enemies. From my own court. They want the throne. I escaped, but they follow. Always. Elias's jaw tightened. He had left the galaxy to escape wars, politics, and betrayal. Yet here was trouble, dropped right at his door. You can't stay here, he said bluntly. If they're after you, they'll come looking, and I don't want that. Serenia looked at him, her violet eyes steady despite her weakness. I cannot leave. Not yet. My ship is broken. I have no strength. And you saved me. Please. Her voice softened at the end, the plea clear even through the translator. Elias turned away, staring at the fire. His heart wrestled with itself. Solitude had been his shield for years, keeping him safe from sorrow. Yet could he cast out someone in need? Could he return to silence after hearing her voice? At last he sighed. You can stay. For now. Until you recover. Serenia lowered her head in gratitude. Thank you, human. Days passed. Serenia slowly regained her strength, though her wounds still needed care. Elias shared his food with her, showing her how to eat the roots and grains he grew. At first she found the taste strange, but soon she accepted it with quiet smiles. When she was strong enough to walk, Elias took her to the workshop. There, among broken machines, lay the parts he had salvaged over years. Serenia examined them, with curiosity. Old human tech, she said. Crude, but clever. Elias gave a dry chuckle. Crude is all I've got, but I make it work. Together they returned to her crashed vessel. Much of it was beyond saving, but some components could be recovered. Elias carried them back, and with Serenia's knowledge and his skill with tools, they began repairing what they could. As they worked, they talked. Serenia spoke of her empire. Vast cities floating above oceans of light, fleets of shining ships, halls of crystal where voices sang instead of argued. But behind her words was sorrow. They wanted me gone, she admitted one evening, because I believed in peace, in change, but in courts, peace is weakness, change is danger. Elias listened quietly, his hands busy with wires. Sounds familiar. Humans aren't much different. Power makes enemies faster than friends. She tilted her head, studying him. You speak as if you knew such things. Elias's jaw tightened. I knew too much. That's why I live here. He said no more, and Serenia did not press. Despite the shadows in their pasts, something grew between them. Serenia found wonder in Elias's simple life. She watched him tend crops, fix machines, and build with steady hands. She admired the patience of his work, the way he lived without riches yet carried himself with quiet strength. Elias, in turn, found himself drawn to her presence. She carried grace in every movement, even when weak. Her laughter, rare but genuine, filled the cabin with warmth he had long forgotten, and when she spoke of the stars, her voice painted them in colors he had never imagined. Still, danger loomed. One night. Elias sat by his old comm device. For years it had remained silent, but lately, faint signals had returned. Strange bursts of energy, patterns too regular to be natural. He stared at the flickering screen, his heart heavy. They were searching. Someone was scanning the sector. He looked toward the bed where Serenia slept peacefully. Her silver hair shimmered in the firelight, Her face calm at last, Elias clenched his fists. He had promised himself never to return to the galaxy's troubles. Yet trouble had found him. And though he would not admit it aloud, he knew one truth. He could not abandon her. Not now. Thus the Hermit's quiet valley was no longer only his. It now carried the secret of a princess in exile, and with it the shadow of her enemies. The man who once fled from the stars would soon find himself standing against them again. And he wondered, was this fate? Or was this the universe telling him that solitude was never meant to last? The days turned into weeks. The valley that once echoed only with the sound of wind and Elias's footsteps now carried new life. There was conversation, laughter at times, and the rhythm of two people learning to live together. Elias Kane, the hermit of the forgotten world, found his days no longer silent. Princess Serenia had brought with her not only the weight of danger, but also the spark of company. Each morning, Elias woke before dawn as he always had. He went to the fields, checked the crops, and repaired the irrigation lines he had built from salvaged pipes. But now, when he returned to the cabin, Serenia would be waiting. Sometimes she had prepared a simple meal from the food he showed her to cook. Other times she was curious about the tools he used and asked endless questions. Her voice was soft yet eager, carrying a tone that made Elias smile in spite of himself. "Why do you do all this by hand?" she asked one morning, pointing at the shovel he carried. "Because there's no one else to do it," Elias replied. "And I don't have machines strong enough, so I use what I've got." Serenia tilted her head. "In my world, even children never touch soil. Machines plant and harvest. Yet here you bend your back and dig with iron. Strange, but noble." Elias chuckled. "It's not noble, it's survival." But inside, her words warmed him. No, one had called his work noble before. When Serenia grew stronger, she began to help him. At first, her hands were clumsy, untrained in simple labor. But she was quick to learn. She carried water, tended plants, and even tried repairing broken tools. Once, while helping in the workshop, she dropped a wrench and it clattered loudly across the floor. Elias turned, half annoyed, but stopped when he saw her face. She was laughing, her silver hair falling across her shoulders. It had been many years since Elias heard laughter in his cabin. The sound was strange, but it filled the place with warmth. Slowly, a routine formed. By day they worked together, Elias showing her the stubborn ways of survival, Serenia teaching him fragments of her star-born wisdom. By night, they sat by the fire. She told stories of shining cities floating in the void, of fleets with wings of light, of songs that guided her people through generations. Elias listened, sometimes in silence, sometimes asking questions. He never said much about his own past. But the princess, with her gentle patience, began to draw out his secrets. One evening, as the fire burned low, Serenia turned to him. "You speak like a man who once knew battle," she said. "Your hands. They are strong, but scarred." Elias stared at the flames. He did not answer at first. Memories he had buried stirred painfully. At last he sighed. "I was an engineer," he said slowly. "Worked on ships. Not warships at first, just freighters, haulers. But when the wars came, everything became warships. I built things that carried people into battles they never returned from." Serenia watched him quietly. "One day," Elias continued, his voice rough, "a ship I worked on failed. A drive core I patched gave out in combat. Everyone aboard, gone. They blamed me. Maybe they were right, maybe it was my fault. After that I walked away. From all of it. From everyone." The fire popped, filling the silence. Elias clenched his fists, his jaw tight. But Serenia's voice was gentle. "You blame yourself. But do you not see? You lived, and you still mend. Still build, still help. A man who hides in the hills and still saves a stranger is not guilty of abandoning life." Elias looked at her, surprised. For years, His guilt had been a chain around his soul, and now this alien princess, who barely knew him, spoke words that loosened it. He said nothing more that night. But when he lay in bed, her words echoed in his mind. As time passed, the bond between them deepened. Serenia began to teach him her people's knowledge. On clear nights they stood outside looking at the stars. She pointed to constellations he had never noticed, drawing patterns with her graceful hands. "That star," she said once, pointing to a bright blue one, "is the heart of my people's realm. Around it circle 7 great worlds, each shining like jewels. When I was a child, I thought they were endless. Now I know even empires are fragile." Elias folded his arms, gazing at the sky. "Fragile or not, they sound beautiful." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps one day you will see them." Elias did not answer. He had no desire to return to the galaxy. Yet a small part of him, the part that had been dead for so long, began to wonder. But peace never lasted. Elias's old comm device, once silent, began to flicker with more regular signals. The strange bursts of energy grew stronger. He showed them to Serenia one afternoon. Her expression turned grim. "They are searching," she said. "My enemies. They use probes, scanning worlds. Soon, they will find this place." Elias frowned. "Then we should prepare." Serenia looked at him, surprised. "You would help me still, even knowing the danger?" Elias set his jaw. "I've already chosen. Leaving you to die in that wreck wasn't an option, so neither is leaving you." Now, for the first time, Serenia's violet eyes softened with deep gratitude. She bowed her head. "Then I am not alone." They began to prepare in secret. Elias worked on traps and defenses, using what little technology he had. He rigged energy cells into crude mines, set hidden alarms across the valley, and rebuilt old drones as watchers. Serenia added her knowledge, adjusting his devices with alien skill, making them sharper and stronger. Side by side, they built not just defenses, but trust. One evening, after long hours of work, they sat outside beneath the stars. Silence stretched between them, but it was not the silence of strangers. It was the silence of companions who no longer feared it. Serenia broke it softly. "In exile, I thought I had lost everything. But now, here, in this quiet place, I have found something new. A man who gave me shelter, who stood by me without asking for crown or reward. You have shown me a strength I never knew." Elias turned to her, the firelight painting his features. "And you've shown me life isn't over. Maybe I wasn't meant to bury myself here forever." For a moment their gazes held. The hermit and the princess, 2 souls from different worlds bound together by chance and choice. Then Elias stood abruptly, breaking the moment. "We should rest. Tomorrow there's more work." But as he walked back inside, his heart was not as heavy as it once had been. The valley had changed. The cabin had changed. Elias Kane had changed. For years his world had been silence, shadow, and regret. Now it was filled with voices, with hope, with the stirring of something he thought lost. Yet in the darkness beyond the stars, enemies moved, closer. And both the hermit and the princess knew. The peace they had built was only the beginning. The valley had grown quiet once again, but Elias Kane knew it was only a temporary calm. The signals on his comm device had grown stronger each day, and Serenia had been restless, her eyes scanning the sky as if she could see danger before it arrived. "They are close," she said one evening, her voice tense. "My enemies. They are near. I feel it in the stars." Elias nodded. "Then we prepare. They will find nothing easy here." He worked with renewed determination, his mind sharpening with each passing hour. The small valley with its rocky hills and twisted trees became a labyrinth of defenses. Hidden pitfalls, tripwires, and improvised energy devices were laid carefully across paths that led to the cabin. Old drones, repurposed and repaired with Serenia's guidance, patrolled the perimeter. Serenia, though still recovering, moved, with precision and grace. She adjusted Elias's devices, added sensors he could not have imagined, and taught him small tricks from her people's technology that made their traps far more effective. Together, they became a team, a hermit and a princess, two minds from separate worlds united by survival. The first sign of danger came on a misty morning. Elias was tending a crop near the cabin when the air shimmered slightly, and distant shapes appeared among the rocks of the valley. "They've arrived," Serenia whispered, stepping beside him. Her violet eyes scanned the landscape, calculating, assessing. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. "Show me." 3 figures emerged, clad in dark armor, moving with precision. Their ships were small, silent, and deadly. They carried no unnecessary weight. Each step was controlled, measured, and they seemed to understand the terrain as if it had been theirs for years. Elias's mind raced. He had faced human armies before, but these were different, faster, smarter, and unpredictable. He had no choice but to rely on ingenuity and cunning. "Stay behind me," he told Serenia. "Follow my lead and do exactly as I say." She nodded. Though her lips were pressed tightly, there was trust in her eyes. The first clash occurred near the northern ridge. Elias had set a simple trap, a hidden pit covered with thin branches and soil. As the armored enemies approached, one of them stepped forward too confidently. The ground gave way beneath him, and he fell with a heavy thud, dislodging rocks that rolled down the slope. The others froze for a moment, then advanced cautiously. They clearly underestimated the valley, assuming it was easy terrain. Elias took advantage of their arrogance. He led them toward a narrow pass between 2 cliffs. Here he had installed energy snares, old power cells rigged to release a short burst of electrical charge when triggered. One enemy reached for him, and sparks leapt across the rock as the device activated. The enemy stumbled, retreating with a hiss of surprise. Serenia watched with fascination and concern. "You fight like a predator of the old forests," she whispered. Elias allowed himself a faint grin, but his eyes never left the enemies. "We are not finished yet." As the day passed, the enemies learned slowly. They were skilled, but Elias's knowledge of the land gave him the advantage. He led them through false paths, into ambushes, and across hidden tripwires. Serenia proved her worth, adjusting traps and helping Elias predict the movements of their pursuers. At one point, they reached a steep canyon. Elias had prepared the area with loose rocks balanced precariously on ledges. As the enemies chased, he triggered a collapse. Rocks tumbled, dust filled the air, and the attackers were forced to retreat temporarily. After the dust cleared, Elias and Serenia took a moment to breathe. She placed a hand on his arm, her eyes bright. "You are clever, human. They cannot outthink you." Elias shook his head. "Clever may not be enough. They have resources we do not. We must stay ready." The final confrontation came at sunset. The enemies had grown cautious, learning from each failed attack. They had lost one of their own, and their pride demanded revenge. Elias knew there was no more room for tricks. It would be a battle of wits, skill, and courage. He led Serenia to the highest hill in the valley, where the cabin was visible but protected by natural cliffs and the traps they had laid. From here they could observe the enemy without being seen. "They will strike soon," Serenia said, her voice steady. "We must act together." Elias nodded. "Then we do it their way, but not like they expect." He spent the next hour setting one final trap. Using parts of Serenia's broken ship, he rigged a device that would mimic a false signal, drawing the enemies into a narrow ravine. The rocks above were balanced carefully, ready to collapse at the right moment. Serenia watched, her hands steady, as she helped position the device. "Human ingenuity, it is remarkable," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "It's what keeps us alive." Night fell, and with it came the attackers. They moved silently, confident they had found the hermit and the princess. But Elias's final trap awaited. As the enemies entered the ravine, the false signal drew them deeper. Elias and Serenia watched from above, their hearts pounding. The rocks shifted, then tumbled with perfect timing, blocking the path and separating the enemy into smaller groups. The first group was trapped. Energy snares activated, sending sparks across the ground. Panic spread among the attackers as they realized the terrain was against them. Elias moved down carefully, rifle ready. Serenia followed, her presence calm but commanding. Together they approached the trapped enemies. "You should leave," Elias called out. "There is no victory here." The enemy leader, tall and imposing, stepped forward, ignoring the warning. "You are only human. You cannot win against the Luthari hunters." Elias's eyes narrowed. "I am not just human. I am human enough to survive, and clever enough to teach you that underestimating us is your mistake." With a swift move, he triggered the final device. Rocks collapsed around the enemy leader, forcing him to fall back. The remaining attackers, seeing their comrades trapped and injured, fled into the darkness, their pride and mission shattered. Serenia stepped beside Elias. "You did it," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "We did it, together." For the first time since her arrival, Serenia allowed herself a faint smile, one that held both relief and admiration. After the battle, Elias and Serenia returned to the cabin. The valley was quiet again, but the air carried a different energy. The danger had been real, yet they had survived. Serenia looked at Elias, her violet eyes thoughtful. "Your world, humanity, it is stronger than I imagined. You are small, yet your mind is sharper than any weapon I have seen." Elias shrugged. "We survive because we have to, and sometimes we outsmart the impossible." The two sat together, by the fire, the glow illuminating their faces. The battle had tested them, but it had also bonded them. Elias had found a companion who saw the value of his life and skills, and Serenia had discovered courage and ingenuity beyond her expectations. "Tomorrow," Serenia said softly, "we prepare for what comes next. My enemies will not give up so easily." Elias nodded. "Then we face them, together." The stars above the valley twinkled as if acknowledging the bond between the human hermit and the alien princess. For the first time in years, Elias did not feel alone. He felt alive, aware and ready for whatever challenges the universe might send. And in the quiet of the night, their hearts beat with the same rhythm, a rhythm of trust, courage, and shared purpose. The first light of dawn spilled across the valley, painting the rocks and trees in pale gold. Elias Kane and Princess Serenia stood at the top of the hill, overlooking the cabin and the surrounding land. The battle from the previous night had left its mark, scattered rocks, scorched earth, and faint smoke. But the valley was safe, at least for now. Elias tightened the strap on his rifle, scanning the horizon. Serenia stood beside him, her posture graceful but her eyes alert. "They will return," she said quietly. "And next time, they will bring more ships, more hunters." Elias nodded. "Then we prepare. But we won't run. Not anymore." There was determination in his tone, a firmness he had not felt in years. For so long he had avoided danger, hiding from the galaxy. But now he was ready to face it head on, not alone, but with Serenia. The day passed with preparation. Elias reinforced the cabin, building barricades and traps. He repaired the last systems of Serenia's ship, combining her alien technology with his human ingenuity. They tested energy shields, reinforced doors, and created escape routes in case the enemy found their valley again. Serenia worked tirelessly beside him, offering advice, scanning the sky, and teaching Elias the subtle ways of her people's devices. For every trap he built, she suggested improvements. For every repaired machine, she adjusted its performance. Together, they worked seamlessly, their bond deepening with each task. During a brief moment of rest, Serenia approached him. Elias, she said softly, you have done more than save me. You have given me hope, your courage. It is unlike anything I have seen in my empire. Elias looked away, unused to praise. I only do what is necessary. Anyone would protect someone in need. She smiled faintly, reaching out to touch his arm. Not anyone. You are exceptional. The words lingered between them, unspoken yet understood. Elias felt a warmth he had not known in years, a connection that stretched beyond survival, beyond danger. Evening came, and with it, the faint hum of distant engines. The enemies had returned. Their ships were larger this time, sleek and deadly, moving with precision. The hunters descended upon the valley, confident and ready to capture the princess. Elias and Serenia took their positions. The traps were ready, the path set, and their minds focused. The first wave of attackers entered the valley cautiously. Elias had anticipated their movements. Using the terrain, he led them into narrow passes where rocks and energy snares would slow them down. Sparks flew, dust rose, and the enemies realized that the valley was a maze of surprises. Serenia stood beside him, guiding the placement of a final device. Her hands moved with precision, a combination of grace and skill. The device, once activated, created a light and sound illusion, drawing the enemy leader into a trap. Elias smiled faintly. Ready? Serenia nodded. With a coordinated move, they triggered the device. The illusion drew the leader forward, and a sudden collapse of rocks blocked his escape. The remaining attackers hesitated, unsure of the terrain. Elias moved quickly, using a simple human trick, setting a small charge to mimic reinforcements approaching from behind. Panic spread among the hunters. They were skilled, but they could not anticipate the cleverness of a human mind working with alien technology. Elias advanced carefully, rifle steady. Serenia followed, her presence calm and commanding. Together, they confronted the enemy leader. You should have stayed away, Elias said. But now, you face the consequences of underestimating us. The enemy leader growled, trying to fight his way out, but Elias and Serenia's combined skill and planning were too much. Trapped and outsmarted, he had no choice but to retreat. The other attackers, seeing their leader captured and the trap set against them, fled into the darkness. The valley was silent once again. After the battle, Elias and Serenia returned to the cabin. The night was calm, the stars shining brighter than ever. The valley, once quiet and lonely, now carried the presence of life, courage, and victory. Serenia turned to Elias, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and admiration. You have saved me, more than once. Your mind, your courage, your heart. Humanity is stronger than I imagined. Elias shook his head. I did what I had to. But we did it together. You were not helpless. She smiled faintly. Together. For a moment they stood in silence, watching the stars. The weight of battles fought and victories won hung in the air. But so did the quiet promise of something new, something neither of them had expected. The next morning, Serenia inspected her repaired ship. It gleamed in the sunlight, sleek and powerful once more. The systems hummed, ready for flight, ready to return her to the empire she had left behind. Elias watched from the hilltop, his hands crossed over his chest. A choice lay before him, one he had not faced in years. The stars called to him just as they called to Serenia. He could return to human society, leave the valley, and step back into the galaxy's challenges. Or he could remain here, in solitude, as he had for so long. Serenia approached him, her presence soft but firm. Elias, the choice is yours. My journey does not have to be yours unless you wish it. He studied her, seeing not a princess or a stranger, but a companion who had changed his life. Her violet eyes met his, and he realized that solitude had no meaning anymore, not when life offered connection, trust, and purpose. I will go with you, he said finally. Not for power, not for glory, but because humanity's gift is connection, and I want to be part of your journey. Serenya's face lit with relief and happiness. Then we leave together. Preparations were quick. Supplies packed, final, checks completed, and the valley left as intact as possible. They boarded the ship. Elias ran his hands over the controls, a mixture of familiarity and awe washing over him. Serenia guided him, sharing knowledge of the vessel's alien systems. As the ship lifted off, the valley shrinking beneath them, Elias felt a sense of wonder he had not known in years. The world he had called home, the solitude he had cherished, now seemed like a stepping stone to something greater, a life shared, a future built together. Serenya's voice broke the silence. The stars are vast, but together, we will navigate them. Elias smiled, the weight of past regrets lifting from his shoulders. Together, he repeated. The journey ahead was uncertain. The Empire, the enemies, and the vastness of space held challenges they could not yet imagine. But Elias no longer feared them. He had learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the strength to face it. He had discovered that ingenuity, patience, and trust could overcome even the most daunting odds. And he had found companionship, the kind that could heal old wounds and ignite hope. As the ship soared among the stars, Elias Kane looked at Serenia. She was no longer only a princess in exile. She was a partner, a friend, a beacon of light in the vast darkness of space. He felt something he had not felt in years. Freedom. Not the freedom of solitude, but the freedom of choice, of life shared, of purpose renewed. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, he knew one truth that would remain forever. His solitude had ended, and with it came the beginning of everything. Together, human and alien, hermit and princess, they ventured into the unknown, ready for the adventures and challenges that awaited among the galaxies. For the first time, Elias Kane smiled freely, no shadows lingering in his heart, no fear of the past, only hope, courage, and the promise of a future shared. The stars welcomed them, and the universe had a new story to tell, a story of humanity's strength, ingenuity, and the bonds that could rise even in the loneliest corners of the cosmos.